There are plenty of murders in Macbeth. A king, a best friend, an entire innocent family. But Shakespeare tells us, explicitly and out loud, that the most important killing in the play has no body, no funeral, and no grave. Moments after Macbeth stabs King Duncan, he stumbles back to his wife, shaking, and reports something strange. He heard a voice cry that, in his words, Macbeth does murder Sleep. Not the king, Sleep. It's a bizarre line, and it's easy to skim past it as poetic panic. But I want to convince you that this single sentence is the skeleton key to the entire play. Everything that follows, the paranoia, the sleepwalking, the slow unraveling of literature's most ambitious couple, flows from that one invisible murder. Macbeth killed Sleep. And unlike a king, Sleep has no heir. It never comes back. Let's set the scene. It's the dead of night in Macbeth's castle. King Duncan, his honored guest, is asleep down the hall. Macbeth has just done the deed, and he returns to Lady Macbeth carrying the bloody daggers he was supposed to leave behind. And instead of talking strategy, he talks about a voice. Somewhere in the darkness, he heard someone cry out, "Sleep no more," and then announce that Sleep itself had been murdered. Now, nobody else heard this voice. It might be a guard talking in his dreams, or it might be Macbeth's own mind speaking to him. Shakespeare deliberately never tells us. But notice what the voice does not say. It doesn't say Macbeth murdered Duncan. It skips past the actual crime and names the real casualty. The king is dead, yes, but the sentence being passed is on Macbeth's ability to ever rest again. To understand why this hits so hard, you need to know what sleep meant to Shakespeare's audience and what it means in Macbeth's own words. Right there in his panic, Macbeth delivers one of the most beautiful descriptions of sleep in the English language. He calls it the balm of hurt minds, and the chief nourisher in life's feast. Think about that imagery. Sleep is medicine. Sleep is food. Sleep is the seamstress that, in his phrase, knits up the raveled sleeve of care, mending, every single night, the damage the day has done to us. In other words, sleep is nature's forgiveness. It's the mechanism by which an ordinary person gets to wake up tomorrow, slightly renewed, slightly absolved. So when the voice says Macbeth has murdered Sleep, it means he has cut himself off from repair itself. Whatever he is tonight, he stays. Now look at how the crime itself is staged, because Shakespeare made a very deliberate choice. Macbeth doesn't kill Duncan in battle, where he's famously good at killing. He kills him asleep, in bed, under Macbeth's own roof, as an invited guest. In Shakespeare's world, that's a triple sacrilege, against a king, against a kinsman, against the ancient laws of hospitality. And there's a devastating detail, buried in the scene. Lady Macbeth, who planned the whole thing, admits she couldn't do it herself, because the sleeping Duncan looked too much like her own father. That's what sleep does to people in this play. It makes them innocent. A sleeping man is trusting, defenseless, almost childlike. So killing a sleeper isn't just murder. It's a betrayal of the one state in which every human being is harmless. Macbeth attacks sleep itself, and sleep retaliates. And retaliate it does, almost immediately. The voice promised that Macbeth shall sleep no more, and the play keeps that promise with terrifying precision. Macbeth becomes king, gets everything he wanted, and finds that the crown comes with a curse, chronic, grinding sleeplessness. He tells his wife they now eat their meals in fear and sleep, when they sleep at all, inside what he calls terrible dreams that shake them nightly. Read that as a modern doctor might. Intrusive thoughts, night terrors, hypervigilance. Macbeth is describing something we'd recognize today as untreated trauma. And here's the sharp irony. He committed the murder to gain peace of mind, to settle the question of his future once and for all. Instead, he's traded a soldier's honest exhaustion for a king's permanent wakefulness. He owns Scotland now. He just can't close his eyes in it. Then Shakespeare twists the knife with one of the darkest jokes in the play. Macbeth starts to envy his victim. He says it almost wistfully. Duncan is in his grave, and after life's fitful fever, he sleeps well. Sit with that inversion for a second. The murdered man is the only character in the play who gets a good night's rest. Nothing can touch Duncan anymore. No steel, no poison, no treason. Meanwhile, the murderer, alive and crowned and victorious, lies awake envying a corpse. Macbeth even says it would be better to be with the dead than to live in this restless ecstasy of fear. That's the play's brutal arithmetic. Death, it turns out, is just sleep that no one can murder. And Macbeth, who destroyed the peaceful version, finds himself longing for the permanent one. The prize and the punishment have switched places. But the most haunting casualty is Lady Macbeth. Remember, she's the one who stayed ice cold on the night of the murder. While her husband babbled about voices, she told him that a little water would clear them of the deed and to simply not think about it so deeply. Fast forward to Act 5, and Shakespeare hands her the cruelest poetic justice imaginable. She sleepwalks. Every night, a doctor and a servant watch her rise, eyes open but senses shut, obsessively washing invisible blood from her hands and muttering fragments of confession into the dark. The woman who commanded her husband to stop thinking now cannot stop, even unconscious. Her sleep hasn't been taken away. It's been hollowed out and turned into a courtroom where her own body testifies against her. The water never clears the deed. And shortly after, off stage and in darkness, she dies. Step back and you can see what Shakespeare is really doing with all this. He's answering a question philosophers were still arguing about: where does guilt live? Not in heaven's ledger, not in the law courts, in the body. Macbeth never gets arrested for Duncan's murder. No detective pieces it together. The punishment is entirely internal, and it's physical: insomnia, hallucinations, tremors, a wife pacing the halls at midnight. 4 centuries before psychologists told us that trauma lodges itself in the nervous system, Shakespeare dramatized exactly that. The doctor watching Lady Macbeth even admits it plainly. This disease, he says, is beyond my practice. She needs, in his words, the divine more than the physician. Conscience in Macbeth isn't a voice on your shoulder. It's your own flesh going on strike, refusing to grant you the one thing it exists to give: rest. And this is why Macbeth still lands so hard in a culture like ours. Because the play is, at its core, a ledger, a precise accounting of what ambition costs when you pay for it with the wrong currency. Macbeth gains the crown, the castle, the title, every external marker of success. What he spins is entirely internal: rest, appetite, friendship, the ability to sit at his own dinner table without seeing ghosts. We live in a world that half jokes, "I'll sleep when I'm dead," and Shakespeare wrote an entire tragedy about a man who accidentally made that bargain literal. The play never argues that ambition is evil. Macbeth's real error is believing that the deed could be done and then be over. But some actions don't end. They just move inside you and keep you company every night at 3 in the morning. So here's the thought I want to leave you with. When that voice cried out in the darkness, it named the truth of the whole tragedy. The deadliest thing you can kill is your own peace. Macbeth is stuffed with blood and battles and witches, but its real horror story happens in a bed, in the silence, in the space between lying down and failing to drift off. Shakespeare's warning isn't, "Don't murder kings." Most of us have that covered. It's that every choice you make is also a choice about who lies awake in your body afterward. Duncan lost his life and gained eternal rest. Macbeth gained a kingdom and lost every night for the rest of his life. Ask yourself, which trade sounds worse? Because in Macbeth, the crown is never the prize. Sleep is. And once you've murdered it, no throne on earth can bring it back. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this gave you a new way to see the story, subscribe to Between the Chapters. A new literary deep dive lands every week, and I'd love to have you along for the next one.